Thanos has returned.
Over now, guys. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Anthony Bresnik, and I cover Marvel for Entertainment Weekly. So I'm your moderator tonight, and on our panel we have Thanos himself, Josh Brolin. Directors Anthony and Joe Russo. And executive producer Victoria Alonso. She's also the VP for physical production at Marvel Studios.
What do you mean which one is me? Oh, okay, sorry.
We got DeLeeuw. He's the visual effects supervisor for Marvel Studios. Kelly Fort, another VFX supervisor on the movie from Digital Domain. And Russell Earl, visual effects supervisor from and that's our panel. So I'm going to ask some questions. At the end, we'll open it up for a couple of questions from you guys. So there's some good ones. Well, let's start with you, Josh. Okay. Ready for that? So as the guy who supplies the heart, the core of Thanos, what was your experience like working with these visual effects supervisors on co-creating this character?
I mean, what am I going to say? That wasn't good. It's hard. I did all the work. It's amazing, actually. It's really amazing because, when I first came in, and the Russos, asked me to do this, or whoever it was that asked me to do it, and I came in and I had this thing in my head, having gone through the Bible of Thanos, I had this, I don't know, it was like a Richard Burton kind of something. Like, it was something very stoic about the whole thing, and they brought me in and to do a test, and it was that digital test that kind of changed everything, because we did a test and they could show it to me almost immediately, a crude test, and I could see already, even in that crude way, how the idiosyncrasies stuck out, and being able to kind of humanize the whole character. And I never saw it like that, because every other character that I had seen, in film that was a digital character, always had that kind of digital, almost like a strobing. So there was always something that, allowed you to pull away from the human aspect of it. So as this went on, and I'll truncate this, but by the time I saw the movie, and after a year of doing this together, I really, because the performance, and I'm not saying me, but the performance was so profound to me within the movie that I really thought that I did it all. Like, it was so human to me, I was like, God, I'm really good. As opposed to, I was the suggestion for what they created, which is the truth. When people start saying, hey, you should be nominated for Academy Award and all this kind of stuff for your performance, it's really tilting the hat to them, because what I did was the beginning, or was a base for what they created, and that's the truth.
Did you learn a lot about things that you didn't even know were a part of this process when you were performing him after the fact?
No, and I don't, did I learn a lot about Thanos?
About the visual effects and the creation?
Well, yeah, I'm still learning.
The things.
I'm still learning. I mean, the thing is you don't want to think too much about that when you're doing it, because then you start thinking you're digital, and you want to stay as human as possible, and you want to, even though you have the suit on, which is just wrong in every way, shape, and form, or you have a proximity, like a chest on, and my arms are short anyway, so I look like thalidomide, hands coming out, and then Chris is jumping off a thing with an axe that has no axe on it, it's just a handle, and he's jumping off and tripping on the apple boxes, and I'm on a platform, and we're looking at each other, and I'm going, you should have gone for the head, or whatever it is. And it's like, I don't know, it's like Cirque du Soleil more than, it's all ridiculous.
Yeah, when you describe it that way, it sounds like,
no, it does.
Are you ever like, is this really going to work?
No. There's every nanosecond you're thinking, is this going to work? And then the truth of the matter is you have to give yourself to it 1,000,000,000%. Because when you see the final product, you know that whatever conviction you don't have is going to show up because everything's showing up. They're using everything that you're doing. So even more recently, because I am fascinated by this stuff and because I did have a really, really good time, you know, I asked them to send me a short film about, like, show me the process, remind me of the process, and they got much more in depth than I knew about it. And it's so involved. It's so much work. I did 0.0005% of the work in creating this character than they did realizing the character.
That is not true.
Not at all.
Let me just intercept here. If you don't start with what you gave, we don't have a character. You just don't. We put him in a ridiculous pajama that shows every part of your body that you're vulnerable about. We put this very intrusive helmet head that it's really, really hard to perform with. We have lights that are never moved for any moment. We blast those lights. There's a lot of people doing a million of technical things, and he gives us the most delicate, private, important moment in that moment. Now that is art. So if you don't have that, then you don't have a character. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Good. We're a good team.
Team, give us.
So Joe and Anthony, you must, Josh said he likes to just perform the character and not necessarily understand all of the elements that go into the digital creation of the character, but you must have a sense of all of that and the merger between the human and the visual effects team when he's, as he said, in that partial suit with a fake axe and apple crates, and when it all seems ridiculous. Do you have how do you reassure your actors that what they're playing is actually going to work?
Well, you know, this role was like the perfect marriage between cutting edge visual effects technology and sort of a wonderful, rich, complex character and like the most amazing actor. It was like, you know, it was like the combination of all of those things. The truth is that we were, because it's cutting edge and because it's very much for moving forward what was the previous capacity with this kind of work, you know, we're all kind of making it up as we go. So, you know, Josh was very trusting in that process. You know, he's a very intelligent actor, and he just said, okay, I get what you're trying to do. I get what my role in that is. So I'm just going to dedicate myself to this, keeping my focus on this on a performance level. And then you guys will eventually turn that into something. And I trust that. And of course, we all worked very hard together to figure out how we translate that into something that audiences will be wowed by, hopefully, you know. And it was a challenge every step of the way, but we had a very specific target that we were going to, and we believed that we had the capacity to achieve it. But there was a leap of faith on everybody's part up here in order to really realize it. And that's when you really realize the importance of having great creative collaborators, because you all have to trust one another enough to be like, okay, we're doing something that is kind of, we don't really have a pattern for in the history of our work, an exact pattern for, but we're gonna take that leap of faith, we're gonna trust one another, we're going to try to make it work, and hopefully it will, and in this case, I think that it did. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mission was, and I know this was Josh's mission, was to keep the character psychologically real. And our job as directors is to make sure that the character stays psychologically real and to give him very human direction, right? So that, you know, we're forgetting about all of the tech, we're forgetting about what he's wearing, and we're keeping the direction very clear and simple so that he can play emotion. And I know you mentioned at one point, Josh, early in the process that it just felt like black box theater to you. You know, that we were doing some experimental theater. And it really is that, because he is the puppeteer of this 8-foot character that these folks created. And, you know, we were working very hard on the script for 2 years. and we were toying with the concept of making the movie, making Thanos a central character in the film. The trick with that, though, is that he was a CG character, and if we couldn't get the level of nuance that we needed, the movie wasn't going to translate, it wouldn't convey emotion correctly, and we would lose the audience. And when we saw the first test that we did with Josh, we knew now that we could start basing the film around the character. Because of the unprecedented technology that they had developed, we could capture his face down to like the 1/1000th muscle that was moving in his face. So everything you see in that character that's happening on his face is him, the movement is him, and allowed us to do something that I think was groundbreaking, which is center a major commercial film around a villain, and center it around a CG villain, and still get a human story out of it.
So you can applaud that. Well said. Can you guys, any of you who wants to jump in with this, characterize what it was that Josh brought that maybe you didn't expect or were surprised or felt like, yes, we absolutely need to capture that and render it within the Thanos that we see on screen? What qualities, or emotional qualities I'm talking, did he bring to this villain?
I think he brought a pathos to the character. He is a sociopath, so it's ultimately not a character you're meant to root for. But my brother and I find it compelling when you dimensionalize villains, because it's easy to compartmentalize them and stick them in a corner when they're two-dimensional and their motives are generic. We wanted to make him complicated. He's a Shakespearean villain, and he has an emotional life. He's doing this because he lost everyone he ever cared about, and now he has some misguided concepts about how he can correct the universe. And I think what Josh brought to it was this incredible pathos, where he would do things that were just awful, and you sat in the audience conflicted about the things he was doing, because there was a monastic sort of dedication and a sadness to the character. At the same time, he was doing, really horrific, committing really horrific actions.
There was a really pivotal moment in the process for all of us where very early on, and I think you mentioned this, we did a test, and Josh came in and we sort of we did some work with him, and as we were discussing the character with him at that point, we're just like, he's a character with a very high emotional intelligence, but he's willing to use that in very coercive ways, with people who are close to him, with people who aren't close to him. So we did a series of improvisations with Josh where he was just on the stage in the motion capture suit, and everybody was, sort of capturing everything they needed to in order to sort of figure out how he created this character. And Josh did this really wonderful improvisation where it was just very naturalistic and very interior and very small, just like really the smallest, most interior form of acting that you can do. And then somehow Dan and the team figured out how to make that translate to a fantastical animated creature. And that was, once that moment happened, once he gave us that performance, and once these guys did their work to figure out how to actually translate that on screen, that's when the character came to life.
The key to him seems to be that subtlety. He's not a villain who yells.
Well, but it's really hard to be
rants.
subtle when you're 8 feet tall and purple.
But he's quiet in his mess.
But that's the true talent, that he gave the teams around the world that the grounding for creating what they created, and that everyone felt something. Not here to challenge what you were feeling. Whatever it was that he made you feel is testament to what Josh gave on the day and what the teams later on, led by Dan and these guys, created. And you forget that he's purple. You forget that he's 8 feet tall. You forget that he is a psychopath, and you feel. Now, if you're able to do that, then we're in. Then you forget that he's CG.
But is he a psychopath?
Well, that's a dinner debate, isn't it?
He's able to sense the pain he's causing. He's aware of it. That's what I find really fascinating about him. He's not derailed from his mission, but he almost
it makes
comforts
sense.
people
What
when
he's
they're...
saying makes sense, and obviously, we're talking a lot more about just Thanos. I mean, the whole movie. There's so much digital brilliance in what these guys did in the entire movie. But in talking about just in talking about there's a character that I played in Milk, and it's a despicable character. But I remember people saying it was kind of like not that Milk was anything less than this, but it was a great practice to my goal in that movie was if I can get 5 mothers in the audience to want to fix me, that's more interesting to me, as opposed to a guy who killed these, renowned, loved people, that started this incredible movement. And then taking it to the next level, that's kind of what it is with Thanos. I don't know how you feel. I know I can objectify. I'm lucky enough to be able to watch a movie, and I can enjoy a movie even if I'm in it. I don't sit there and go, God, my nose looks weird, or why are my eyes so deep set? Or maybe
my chin so wrinkled?
Why does my chin look like a ball sack? Who made that decision? Who do I need to talk to?
Not a reference that we use, people. Right, team? Right, Daniel.
Yeah, that was Daniel. I must have said something to Daniel at some point that didn't like. But the truth of the matter is that me as an observer, you watch the movie and you feel for the character, and isn't that the point? That you get to we've gotten to that place in our digital technological advancement where we can actually experience a movie like this on an purely emotional level. And that's incredible. That's a huge shift.
So Dan and Kelly, we're talking about Thanos a lot because he was one of the hardest things to accomplish in this movie. From your point of view, how did you merge your skills and talents and technology with what Josh supplied?
Well, I think everything we talked about was supplying. That's part of the design, or the goal of what we were trying to design. It was something where the creative process could not get lost in technology, but kind of be immersed in technology and not feel it. There's definitely the aspect of wearing the motion capture suit and rigging up every day, which is part of it. But there's also the idea that let's make this as a minimal footprint as we can, so that you could actually go onto set, right? So we did some stuff with motion capture volume, but the goal was to take the stages and actually rig them so we could capture Josh's movements and his performance actually on the stage, on the set, with the other actors. So you actually get a performance where they're listening to Josh and Josh is just listening to them. And it's something that I think always drives the movie forward in a way that performance is everything. And the Russos are there directing in real time, and you just kind of get these like odd little happy accents. And kind of like one of my favorite things is that when Josh is on stage and he's on the platform, and there's this, he comes up and like he pets the other actors, like they're almost like little smaller characters to him. So he does a big memorial, reach down and feel her hair, and then Wanda at the end with Lizzie, he's kind of touches her hair, so he's gentler with women, and then when it's with RDJ, he just takes his hand and gloms his hand on top of his head. So this is something really organic that happens when they're all together, and it's not the sterile environment of the mocap stage. So it was kind of designing everything that you could facilitate that. So you have, there's like your motion control, there's like, mission control on the side with all these guys like sitting there watching all the little markers and kind of getting coherence to that. And then there's the motion capture helmet that Josh had to wear with 2 little cameras on the front that would record his dotted face. And it's like, making that available. And then it's also then when you get that data, what do you do with it in post? And what can you do to catch that subtle performance? And kind of prior to this, the way it's been done is that you take dots on an actor's face, and then you just have multiple versions of their facial expressions, and those dots drive that. And it can never get you out of the uncanny valley. It was always something that because it was a basically a keyframe that the things, the motion capture was driving to, it always felt a little dead, in the subtle movements of the face were dead. And what was special about what Kelly and his team did is that they found a way to capture all that subtle movement. So that's the handoff to Kelly. We'll talk about the
So how did you find that, Kelly?
Well, I just want to agree with, just one, Josh, appreciate the enormous, just the stuff that we have to put you through. All the dots and the ridiculous outfits and all the motion capture stuff. It's very impressive to sort of, for you to be able to go into that world, that internal world, because all of this, it is indeed incredibly complicated, and there's a lot of people working behind the scenes, but it's all at the service of making sure that your performance comes through with the highest fidelity possible, and that's entirely that was our entire goal for this. So some of my favorite scenes in the film, which you just saw, are his relationship with his daughter Gamora, right after he snaps his fingers, and you go with young Gamora, and there's this incredibly dramatic and subtle performance that would not have been possible with earlier technology. And that technology is just being able to capture the subtleties of your performance to a level that just hadn't been done before.
Is it that more extreme types of emotion or performing were captured by the technology earlier on, and now it's able to capture quiet?
Extreme. Josh kind of said it right. A lot of times before, where you would have cameras looking back at the actor's face, would have about 150 dots on the face. Those dots would be tracked, and then they would be handed off to what we call an animation rig, which is essentially a control for keyframe animators to actually work. But 150 controls is a lot of controls, but it's nothing compared to the thousands of, if you basically were to convert what we actually captured, it would be in the hundreds of thousands of controls. Like every 8th square inch of the face. So it's getting everything. And you just simply wouldn't be able to have, it would just be too unwieldy for an animator to actually go in there and try to animate, every 8th inch of skin. Yeah, it just does not work. So that's the innovation.
Yeah, that was and that's where the performance lived, right? That's where the subtleties of the performance lived in those small little eye movements and all the muscles below the eye. And just kind of the great part about it was just in terms of using the machine learning with trying to basically, their software was designed to be able to take those 150 dots and convert them into those that kind of 100,000 density mesh. Basically, is that the software could be taught to recognize Josh's face and convert it.
Yeah, and early on we would see, we would have reference of Josh's photography, what he was actually doing. Then we would see the result of the machine learning of Josh's face. So it would be Josh, comparing Josh to Josh, basically. And if it didn't look right, we would make an adjustment. Let's say the lips were compressed not enough, or the brow wasn't raised enough. Whatever it was, we would make a modeling change, feed it back through the system so that it would essentially learn from its mistakes. So the more that we did this over and over, it got more and more accurate. So as we actually fed it more and more performances, these actually spat out more and more accurate results, which was great.
But one of the things that this technology does is, we used to do it before with 150 points, but there were times where it always felt external. And the one thing that we're able to do it now is it feels like an internal feeling that we're externalizing, so that you see the process of Josh feeling the moment. And it feels that when he does cry, when he says goodbye to older Gamora, or to young Gamora, when he says, what did it cost? It cost everything. You don't just see it on the face, you feel it. And part of it is how many controls do you have with every single muscle. You see the eye twitch, you see the pupil having the density change. Those were things that we weren't able to do it to that level, I would say, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
So, Russell, can we talk about Wakanda and the creation of T'Challa's home world, or home country? You were responsible for leading the team that created a lot of that final battle sequence, right?
Yeah, so we worked on basically everything surrounding Wakanda. So, Black Panther came out. I don't know if any of you heard of that film, but it was another Marvel film prior to this.
Listen, if you haven't, you can go to the AMC theater. They're playing them for free. Please bring everybody. And also, if you want some free comics, go to marvel.com. We're giving away free comics. There's 5 free comics. And if you know any kid that can't afford it, please send the login. Please give it away. Please, it's the beginning of a dream for a little kid. And if they don't have access, they're free. So please go online, marvel.com, and you can have free comics. Anyway, there you go.
The thing that was different in this film was that there was a big battle that took place on Wakanda. So we shot this film outside on a horse farm in Atlanta, and on a small set that the production designer Charlie Wood created for us, which actually looked, we call it the postage stamp. It was a very small area that looked like an African savanna with some fake trees. And Dan Siddick, who's not here tonight, he built us a river that was about 300 feet long that could just recirculate and pump the water through. I mean, it's pretty incredible. You look at it and you're like, wow, where are we? But so we took that and we used that as a basis for building a fully digital version of the same thing. So one of the things that happened, and having worked with Joe and Anthony on prior films, is the scope always gets bigger. So you start.
No, that's not true.
So we sort of built with that in mind. So we built knowing that we might have to expand and have wider shots. And basically, we wanted to have it be where you could go, you could create any shot anywhere in Wakanda, and we could achieve that. So so we built, from every pebble, every blade of grass, all that could be interacted with. And we had CG versions of our characters, and we had Thor's arrival, and then Proxima and Hulkbuster, Cull fight, some of the other characters that were also realized in CG. And then we built it all and had a great battle, and then we destroyed it all. So that's always fun.
Dan was telling me you also had to save the day when like a giant thunderstorm swept in and kind of ruined that set, right?
Oh, it was pretty amazing. I mean, you're in Atlanta, and 1 minute it's sunny and gorgeous and beautiful, and the next minute it's just like pouring rain and it's dark, and so the other interesting thing was they had planted all of this grass, months prior, so that it would grow to the perfect height and look like the savannah. When we got there, and it was all caution taped off, like, do not walk on this grass. And anyone who's been around a film crew before knows that, like, okay, we're going over there, and every car and so, you do 2 takes, and the grass is just all trampled. As careful as people could be, it just wasn't practical. That coupled with the rain, so it just meant that we had to recreate, and hopefully in the film you don't really even notice, but in those shots, the majority of the savannah is all computer generated.
I have to say, it was really amazing. I visited the set of this movie when you were shooting there on that farm, and it was the scene where Thor and Captain America see each other again for the first time and compare their haircuts. And you guys were really racing the clock to beat a thunderstorm that was moving in. And it was like a mudslide after that, and the way it looks in the film looks gorgeous and looks the way it did before nature unleashed its wrath on your set. What were some of the other things that are a little more subtle about the creation of Wakanda that were fun to create?
I mean, it was, it's an epic, one of many epic moments in the film. Just having all of those characters back, and the good guys versus the bad guys up on the hill coming down. It's always fun. You see that stuff, and we get great previs that comes in, and it's hard not to, just not get inside and be like, oh my God, can you believe we're actually getting to work on this? It's just one shot after another. Normally you work on a film and there's
a handful of shots that the artists, tons of artists working very hard are sort of, going after, oh, can I do that shot, can I do that? And there are just so many great shots in the film that can be divided out. People are just, happy to get to work on any of them.
Victoria, you come from a visual effects background.
Yes.
And I think I read an interview with you where you said this film was like one long 2.5 hour visual effect. Was there one you're especially proud of?
I think it's longer than 2.5 hours. Listen, I love visual effects and what it can do for the story and the storytelling. I'm on my 23rd Marvel movie. Thank you. And many with all of them. And what you can do with good storytelling and technology is an unstoppable dream. There's nothing that you can't do. And it's a beautiful thing to see you holding your baby Groot. He's your favorite? He's got a little bit of Thanos in him sometimes. I don't know.
I've been looking for it the whole time and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, there it is.
It makes all of us grown folks have a dream ourselves. And I think that part of what you can do with technology is you can open doors that otherwise you wouldn't have had. And for us is creating worlds that we could not even dream of that was on the page. And now you get a chance to make it into the moving image. And visual effects allows you, there's nothing more exciting than to see the cut of this movie when it's all green screen, because it's one big long green screen challenge, and then slowly it's almost like finishing that puzzle that you just put piece after piece after piece after piece. And when you have great collaboration with beautiful, talented men, and trust you me, there is women. Tonight it's just me, but there are. It's a dream come true. I always say I drop off my daughter in Playa, and I travel from Playa to Burbank every morning, and I take 3 freeways. And I have a choice. I can go to the right and go to the beach, or I can get to 3 freeways in an hour and 10 minutes of traffic. And there's nowhere I'd rather be than to make these movies for you guys.
These guys have to run, but let's take a couple of questions. Who has a really good one? Everybody always thinks they do. Let's start here. I'll come out to you so you can ask it.
The microphone.
Oh, hello. Hi. I just wanted to congratulate all of you guys because you guys did a great job. And I also wanted to wish him a happy birthday.
Oh yeah, you know what we need to do?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you. That was great.
Thank you for spending your birthday with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Yes, ma'am, there in the middle.
Hi, I have a quick question. Obviously, Mr. Russo and Mr. Russo, you both think the movie out so well, and there's so much visual thought for the script, but I'm curious, the vision of Karen Gillan up in the air, and then you turn and you can see that she's been separated out, was that something at the script level, or was that something that the visual effects team kind of saw something on the page and was able to take and run with, and or was there other moments that the team took and ran with, or did you two sort of see it all the way through?
That was
Great question.
That was a visual design moment, and that was not something that was scripted. I don't think. I remember.
Something that came up in Previs, I think.
Yeah. It's, might have been one of the artists' ideas.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It was
But
something
it was noted on the script that he was
torturing her, yeah.
torturing her.
But
The concept of the camera coming around and revealing that she had been
you
pulled
had,
apart.
you had pitched the gag of pulling her apart, I think, and then we kind of played it into the perspective thing.
we've done 4 of these movies in 7 years, and it all blends together.
That's
It's a hard time remembering.
But that was to show you how wonderful the previous team, and that our collaboration way is that the script will say it, but if one of the artists comes up with an idea, and this happens every time that we work with vendors, they're partners to us. So if they have the idea and the idea is great, we'll take it.
Yeah,
We do not discriminate where it comes from.
thousands
It's
of
all there.
collaborators on these movies, and I think, I would say that there's like a consortium of a brain trust that, really key collaborators, Dan being one of them, Russell being another one, Kelly, that, on all of these films that we rely on, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions that have to be made. And, our job is to fly at 60,000 feet and try to have a global perspective of the project. And then there's a lot of thought that goes into every detail and level of detail, especially on the VFX side. I mean, these movies just don't work without photoreal and groundbreaking VFX. The story just can't be told without it. And the amount of work that these guys have done over the last 7 years is staggering. I think, how many shots have you worked on with us, Dan? 10,000?
Yeah, but next one's done,
Yeah.
Well,
so-
10,000 in the movie, then
Yeah.
there's 17 versions for each of them, so it's like 170,000 shots, and forget it.
But your question is really excellent in the sense that I think that it gets to the heart of like how this whole team works together. Like that was a moment when we saw that piece of key art with her separated like that. Now, and even though it was a scripted moment, it wasn't scripted exactly like that. When we saw the visual, we were like, that's it. That's in the movie. We're doing that. And I think that's really what led to the creation of Thanos, the same kind of process, which is like when these guys were able to present a representation of what Josh could do as an actor, and then all of a sudden there's a moment of clarity, and you're like, that's exactly what we're driving at in this movie. That's what we're going to build the whole movie around, that concept. And that's the whole heart of the process.
All right, we'll take one more question. The woman in the back there in the black.
There's a huge race for development of, this is for the guys in the middle, huge race to develop the best facial recognition software and voice recognition software, not just in the movie industry, but in public life and in military life. How do you keep the things that you've developed either under wraps for yourselves, or do you receive, like in the middle of the night, secret offers?
I don't know if everybody could hear.
We couldn't tell you any of the answers of what you just asked. You understand that, right?
I've made a secret offer.
I think
We're denied.
the question is, you develop this technology, then do you keep it to yourself? Or how, I mean, if you're an independent visual effects house, I guess you would. That's part of what makes somebody want to hire you, right?
Yeah, I think, all the different visual effects houses are at different stages right now, I think, in terms of what they develop. And, they'll leapfrog over the years, and, each one, but it is kind of a proprietary knowledge that they have in terms of, what they're doing, and that kind of what gives them the edge. But then, two, we've got CGRAPH. It's like a special interest group in computer graphics that every year we'll have courses there. People will talk about, like markerless facial recognition and things like that. And that always seems to be kind of the beginnings of what the different visual effects houses take, and just kind of start developing from there.
Yeah, and we always try to, with each project, each consecutive project, we try to up our own game, either because we want to just internally, amongst ourselves, and we want to improve the technology, just make it look better and better with each film, and also just because we want to be more competitive, because other studios are doing the same thing. But yes, there's lots of options for getting information. A lot of it's pretty open, actually. While it's proprietary, a lot of it's also shared, and a lot of artists transfer between different studios a lot of the time from project to project. So people that work at Digital Domain work at ILM and back and forth, and Weta Digital. It's all kind of one big happy family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. while we are all competitive and we work for different companies, I think one of the things that working on these Marvel films has done is the films are so huge that there's got to be sharing and you have to play nice. And I think we've gotten to the point now where we're just sharing and, we're setting models and paint back and forth and shapes and all different things. While we have our own internal proprietary tools, we work together to make the films and realize the stories that these guys want to tell. And I think that has actually just upped the game and everybody is, we're looking at our competitors and saying, wow, look what they're doing. We've got to up our game and reinvent. So I don't think anybody's ever just sort of, well, just by the nature of the business, nobody's ever like, oh yeah, that's good. We did that. Well, that's good enough. We're always like, oh, what are we going to do next? What can we make better?
And also, our characters are shared by a lot of facilities. So, these guys, they did Wakanda, but somebody else helped. They did the Hulk, but there's 3 other companies that did the Hulk. DD did part of Thanos, but so did Weta in New Zealand. And they have to talk to each other because the character you see has to be seamless. You can't tell, oh, that's the character that was done in Los Angeles versus the one that was done in Wellington in New Zealand. It doesn't work. Thanos is Thanos is Thanos. And that is for every character that gets shared. We've had even in another movie where one company that was having a great success with a character, we flew them to see the other company that was not having the greatest success, to sit down and break it apart and say, how do we make it better for the movie? Not for your company or my company, but the collaborations of how do we do it together? And that's the beautiful thing about, again, I guess the theme is collaboration. You can't make these movies if you don't do it together. You just can't.
Here's a question for you guys. Is there another human face on the planet Earth that's been as digitally analyzed as Josh Brolin?
No way. I also think an appropriate way to end the evening is, I think we're legally bound to tell you that we have captured all of your faces. We know where you live. We know who you are.
We can turn you into Thanos.
And Josh is going to snap his fingers.
Yep.
Let me tell you a quick story that there was so much under wraps with this story. We've been talking about keeping the digital process under wraps, but there was so much under wraps. And you never wanted to, you're under contract not to say anything, which I never do well. Like when anybody tells me anything of what to do, I usually do the opposite. It's just in my blood. But you would even go to the urinal and there would be a sign that just said, shh. And it got really scary. Like it even scared me. But there was one point where I knew basically what was happening, but I'm just wrapped up in my own shit. So I'm watching the movie, and he does his thing, and people start disintegrating, and I'm thinking, what the fuck? And I look to my left, and I see Hemsworth, who's sitting on the opposite aisle, and he looks at me and he goes, like, you're going to be the most hated man on the planet. So whatever they did seemed to work.
Did he also tell you about Sexy Thanos?
No, he didn't. What was Sexy Thanos?
So Google it tonight.
Don't Google it.
Don't Google it.
All right, well, thank you for sticking around for the Q&A. I want to thank our panelists, Josh Brolin, Joe Russo, Alonso, DeLeeuw, Kelly Port, and Russell Earl.